Welcome to the FAA's public information meeting on the Raleigh-Durham International Airport flight procedures. We will start the workshop soon. When the workshop begins, we will start with a welcome message from the FAA's regional administrator, followed by a video that describes the new flight procedures, and then hear information about the project from the environmental and air traffic control specialists. We will then start the question and answer portion. If you have any technical issues, please text the following number: 949-478-0253. Welcome to the FAA's public information meeting on the Raleigh-Durham International Airport flight procedures. We will start the workshop soon. When the workshop begins, we will start with a welcome message from the FAA's regional administrator, followed by a video that describes the new flight procedures, and then hear information about the project from the environmental and air traffic control specialists. We will then start the question and answer portion. If you have any technical issues, please text the following number: 949-478-0253.
Good evening. I'm Michael O'Hara. I'm the Regional Administrator for the Federal Aviation Administration Southern Region. Good to have everybody with us tonight. We're here this evening to share some information on some procedure changes the FAA is making. In fact, it includes 23 arrival and departure procedures that'll be used to safely and efficiently move aircraft in and out of RDU Airport. These changes are part of a broader modernization effort across the national airspace system to implement satellite-based navigation. This is an FAA project, but we've worked collaboratively with the airport and with several airlines on the procedure designs. And in fact, we're joined this evening with participants from the airport and the airlines. So I'd like to thank Bill Sandifer, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the RDU Airport, for being with us, as well as Tracy Montross from American Airlines, Mark Hopkins from Delta Airlines, Gary McMullen from Southwest Airlines, and Cesar Matos from the Airline Pilots Association. So the changes that we're going to discuss this evening are planned to take effect in early 2021. And we want to spend some time tonight sharing an overview of what these changes mean. We're going to have a short video, and we're going to share some background on the environmental analysis for the project. We're going to show what the changes look like from an air traffic perspective, and we have subject matter experts from right there at Raleigh-Durham Air Traffic Control who will join us. And then we're going to take time to answer the questions that you submit to us about the project. So I'd like to note, this isn't a required public meeting, but the FAA has worked in partnership with the airport and the airlines, and we jointly recognize the benefit of sharing information with communities so that you understand what's going on in the airspace above your homes and your workplaces, and that we demonstrate some transparency as we're moving through a project like this. And with that goal in mind, I want to thank each of you for attending, and we hope the meeting tonight proves to be informative. I'd like to cover a couple housekeeping steps as we get started. If you want to submit a question to us, you can do so using the Q&A button on Zoom, or you can send us questions if you're watching live on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. If you have any technical issues, you can text your question to us at 949 949-478-0253. Again, that's 949-478-0253. As a reminder, we have a project website at faa.gov/go/RDU. And you can find the project video we're going to show in just a couple minutes, as well as some of the graphics and procedure boards that Rob Ross will walk us through later in the meeting. And the recorded session from tonight's workshop will be available probably in the next 24 hours out on the project website as well. So we are recording the meeting tonight, and that session will be posted again at faa.gov/go/RDU. So as we get started, we're going to show an 8-minute video about the project, and then Chip Gibson, our FAA environmental team manager, is going to give a quick overview of the environmental analysis for the project. So Sarah, if you would go ahead and start the video, please. Thank you.
The FAA is in the process of updating the arrival and departure flight procedures at Raleigh-Durham International Airport. The new flight procedures will allow aircraft to more safely and efficiently enter and exit the airspace surrounding the airport. This project is part of the FAA's nationwide strategy to modernize the entire airspace system and meet the future demand at busy airports like RDU. In recent years, RDU has continued to grow and serve the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill region. Businesses, leisure travelers, and cargo shipping all benefit from having a nearby international airport. As a result, the local economy has grown, and in turn, air traffic at RDU has increased. In 2019, RDU averaged more than 600 daily arrivals and departures, with 10 major airlines serving 14.2 million passengers and shipping over 100,000 tons of cargo. This video provides information on air traffic control flight procedures, including background on why we make changes to the airspace, what is a procedure, and how are they modified. This video will provide specific examples for Raleigh-Durham International Airport. The National Airspace System is a three-dimensional structure in the sky that allows controllers to manage the safe and efficient flow of aircraft between airports. Many of the pathways leading to our busiest airports are old and inefficient. By building new and more predictable flight paths, we can improve the safety and efficiency of the operations in the airspace and on the airport surface. The creation of performance-based navigation, or PBN flight procedures, is one of the key elements of modernizing our airspace. A PBN flight procedure is a route through the sky that connects airports to airports, safely segregates air traffic, keeping flights clear of obstacles and terrain, and provides safe passage through the skies. Creating and publishing a PBN procedure in the National Airspace System follows a well-defined multi-step process that begins with a specific need, benefit, and purpose. A team of air traffic professionals, operators, airports, and other aviation stakeholders contribute to the design of a procedure. Historically, airports were constructed based on the prevailing winds, with aircraft departing and landing into the wind. RDU has 3 runways. There are 2 primary runways oriented northeast to southwest, which are parallel to each other. The third runway is shorter and is oriented from northwest to southeast. In Raleigh-Durham, the prevailing wind direction varies throughout the year. About half of the time, winds favor a northeast operation, and the remaining half of the time, winds favor a southwest operation. When the wind is generally coming from the northeast, aircraft land and depart to the northeast, flying into the wind, using runways 5 left and 5 right. When the wind is generally coming from the southwest, aircraft land and depart to the southwest, flying into the wind, using runways 23 left and 23 right. The new PBN flight procedures are for departures and arrivals on the 2 primary runways. The third runway, runway 1432, is rarely used because it runs perpendicular to the primary runways and is much shorter. Therefore, it is only usable by small aircraft and helicopters. In complex and busy airspace such as RDU, controllers continually manage, space, and separate arrivals and departures throughout the day. Modern technology and procedures make that job more safe and efficient because the separation requirements can now be incorporated within the procedure. Departures will have the most efficient routes off the ground, reducing airborne delays such as holding patterns or speed reductions. Departures and arrivals have numerous crossing routes where aircraft separation must occur to ensure a safe and efficient operation. A traditional descent is like walking down a flight of stairs. Based on air traffic controller instructions, the pilot descends and applies speed brakes, then levels off and powers the engines up, then descends and applies speed brakes again. The cycle repeats itself until the plane is on final approach to the airport. By contrast, an optimized profile descent, or OPD, has built-in speed and altitude requirements at various points on the route. This information is programmed into an airplane's flight computers and allows them to essentially glide down to an airport on idle power, and controllers don't have to issue instructions after clearing the plane to begin its descent. To fly an OPD, the aircraft must be placed on a single, precise path starting from cruise altitude all the way to landing on the runway. This is like driving a car from a highway to an exit ramp and then a neighborhood street, but seamlessly and without stopping. By placing an aircraft on a continuous, predictable path, it is procedurally separated from all other aircraft in the area that are arriving and departing at the airport. Such a path is the safest and most efficient possible route and can be used during periods of low traffic volume. PBN arrival and departure procedures were introduced at RDU about 10 years ago. However, these procedures are not being used as published due to crossing altitudes and speed restrictions, and some aircraft are not able to execute the current approach procedures as designed. Therefore, the FAA is planning to implement 4 new PBN arrival procedures, 12 new approach procedures, and 7 new departure procedures. These new procedures will replace all of the existing procedures at the airport. The new arrival procedures will take effect once aircraft have started descent from cruise portion of the flight. They will provide stabilized descents, remove level-offs, and allow for near-idle approaches. Jet aircraft will follow the same general flight path used today from the beginning of descent to approximately 6,000 feet in altitude. Each arrival procedure consists of segments that guide the aircraft to land on a particular runway. The last segment is the final approach, which consists of the final few miles where an aircraft is lined up with the runway. At RDU, 12 approach procedures will be updated. 4 of them will continue to use the traditional ground-based navigational aids, while the remaining 8 will use precise satellite guidance using PBN technology. The new departure procedures will follow the same flight paths used today to take off from RDU, then exit the local airspace. The new PBN procedures are designed to remove airspace conflicts, resulting in less leveling off during the climb, which is more efficient and can reduce noise exposure levels. They are designed to work in tandem with the arrival procedures at RDU. Departure aircraft typically remain under the arriving aircraft. These changes will ensure safety and separation standards are maintained where these routes cross. This video provides a basic understanding of how the air traffic control system works in the Raleigh.
Hello, I'm Chip Gibson. I'm the Environmental Team Manager for the Operations Support Group in the Eastern Service Center. My team was responsible for the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, documentation and compliance for this project. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to explain NEPA and the FAA's process of documenting the proposed changes to the existing procedures at the Raleigh-Durham Airport. And we have some slides. Okay. So the National Environmental Policy Act requires federal agencies to assess the environmental effects of federal actions prior to making decisions. NEPA ensures that agencies consider the significant environmental effects of these proposed actions. The documentation of effects to the environment that cannot be mitigated to levels below significant would be in the form of an environmental impact statement. If the effective actions are unsure, then the agency would first conduct an environmental assessment to determine if there were any impacts and if an EIS would be prepared. Or if none were found, we would issue a finding of no significant impacts or a FONSI. In the case of the proposed changes to the existing procedures at Raleigh-Durham, a determination was made to use a categorical exclusion, or CADEX. This is not an exemption from or a waiver of environmental analysis, but a determination by the agency that's based on categories of actions that have been shown to have no potential for significant impacts to the environment. The agency develops a CADEX through documentation of its actions and receives approval for these CADEXs from the Council on Environmental Quality. Next slide. In order to ensure a complete assessment, the FAA also conducted a noise analysis of the proposed changes to the existing procedures. Using historical radar track data from pre-COVID operational conditions to accurately show those operational levels, the tracks were selected from June of 2018 to March 2019. A total of over 17,000 radar tracks were used to establish a historical baseline noise model. Next slide. That model was then compared with a model built using existing procedures with the proposed changes. The results of that comparison were no significant or reportable increases in noise. The FAA's reference to no significant increase refers to an established objective standard and doesn't make a subjective statement as to an individual's perception of noise. I hope that helps with the understanding of the FAA's environmental determination and compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. For more information regarding the proposed changes to the procedures, I'd like to turn it over now to Robert Ross, an air traffic control specialist from the Raleigh-Durham area.
Thank you, Chip. And good evening, everyone, again. And thanks for joining with us this evening. As Chip said, my name is Robert Ross, and I'm an air traffic controller at the Raleigh-Durham Airport. I'm going to walk through 8 different poster boards this evening showing departure and arrival procedures at the Raleigh-Durham Airport. But before we begin, I'd like to explain a little on how to read these boards. Centered in the middle of the map, labeled RDU, is the Raleigh-Durham International Airport. The maps will show various procedures, and the legends associated with each map will change to indicate which type of procedure is shown. Also, overlaid on each map is existing aircraft radar track data. This track data is color-coded by altitude, which is shown in the legend on the bottom right of the map. Each procedure, when shown, uses a 5-letter designator and will be labeled with an arrow indicating the direction of travel. The procedure example on the right, OXFRD, is pronounced Oxford. The waypoints represent specific geographic locations that aircraft fly to along a given procedure. Waypoints, like routes, use a 5-letter designator as well. The remainder of the information will be outlined in the following boards. The first 2 boards that we're going to look at will show jet aircraft departing from Raleigh-Durham, illustrated by the purple arrows now. This first board shows the 7 area navigation standard instrument departure procedures, or as we refer to them as SIDs. A SID is a published flight procedure followed by aircraft on an instrument flight plan after they depart from an airport. Starting from the center of the map, the colorful radar track data shows jet aircraft departing from Raleigh-Durham to the southwest. All of these aircraft are directed by controllers such as myself using a vector or a compass heading to the first waypoint on a procedure. These aircraft will continue to fly similar paths and altitudes shown here by the existing radar tracks, but with the initial altitude assigned to the jet aircraft departing from Raleigh-Durham will be changed. Jet aircraft will be assigned 6,000 feet instead of 7,000 feet as they are today. This change will allow air traffic controllers to separate the arrivals from departures more efficiently, as was highlighted in the video. As I explain the remaining boards, please keep in mind that air traffic controllers may be required to direct aircraft away from any procedure to avoid things such as hazardous weather, for operational needs, or for safety. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see a similar view, but with the radar track data showing aircraft departing from Raleigh-Durham to the northeast. The same 7 departure procedures are shown here by the purple arrows, and just like the Southwest operation, aircraft will be directed by controllers to the first waypoint on a procedure using compass headings. The aircraft in this operation will continue to fly similar paths and altitudes as shown by the existing radar tracks, but with the same change to the initial altitude assigned to the jet aircraft departing from Raleigh-Durham. Once again, jet aircraft will initially be assigned 6,000 feet when departing from Raleigh-Durham instead of 7,000. This change, just like the Southwest operation, will allow air traffic controllers to separate the arrivals from departures more efficiently. I'd like to now transition to the arrival procedures at Raleigh-Durham, and the next 6 boards will help illustrate these operations. And just as a reminder, this entire presentation and material will be available on our website at the conclusion of this event. The jet arrivals landing at Raleigh-Durham fly one of 4 area navigation standard terminal arrival routes, or we refer to them as stars, which are shown here in orange. A star is a published flight procedure followed by aircraft on instrument flight plans to transition them from the en route phase of flight to the approach phase for arrival to an airport. The 4 stars at Raleigh-Durham are the Aldan from the northwest, or the top left portion of your screen, the Mauner from the southwest, or bottom left, Blog's arrival from the southeast, or bottom right portion of the screen, and the Tackle from the northeast. The routes we're currently looking at are what jet aircraft will follow when Raleigh-Durham is landing in the southwest flow. These stars ultimately transition aircraft to the approach procedure at 6,000 feet. One takeaway from this operation you may have noticed is that the Blog's arrival from the southeast does not have a connected approach procedure, and all aircraft will be vectored or assigned a compass heading by air traffic controllers to the runway. Let's now zoom in and take a look at how aircraft will continue along these routes. Here we're focused on the point at which aircraft transition from the arrival procedures to the approach paths when landing in the southwest flow. Aircraft on these stars will continue to fly similar paths and altitudes, shown here by the existing color-coded radar tracks and the dispersed path area. In this operation, the Butts waypoint and the SL waypoint will both move slightly to the north, approximately 3 nautical miles along the dispersed path area, and this was due to procedure design criteria and for approach connectivity. Again, these arrivals transition to an approach at approximately 6,000 feet. By now, you might be wondering, what is this dispersed path area? Simply put, it's the area shown in yellow where air traffic controllers typically vector aircraft to join approaches during periods of increased traffic volume. Now, let's move to the next slide and we'll connect the approaches to the STAR procedures. Each approach here, which is now shown in green, begins at a waypoint where the STAR transitions to the approach. For example, the tackle STAR from the northeast or top right portion of the map transitions to the approach at the SL waypoint. By connecting these approaches to the STARs, we will better assist pilots in their descent planning and aircraft management by continuing to provide a stable approach all the way to the airport. Keep in mind that these connected approaches are just one tool that we can use as air traffic controllers. And that being said, you should not see all the existing radar tracks shown collapse and condense along these approaches. And during periods of high traffic volume, my fellow coworkers and I must still vector aircraft within the dispersed path areas to safely and efficiently sequence them for landing at Raleigh-Durham. We'll go ahead and turn the airport operation now around. We'll zoom back out and let's take a look at the northeast flow. In this operation, the jet aircraft will fly the same 4 area navigation arrivals, which are shown in orange, but the routes will initially align aircraft for landing in this operation now. Again, these arrivals are the Aldan from the northwest, the Mauner from the southwest, Blogs from the southeast, and the Tackle from the northeast. Aircraft along these routes will still continue to fly similar paths and altitudes as they do today. And just like the Southwest operation, they will transition to the approach at approximately 6,000 feet. One difference in this operation, you'll see the Blogs arrival from the southeast does have some approach connectivity now. Let's zoom in again and we'll see how these aircraft will transition along the routes. Once again, we're focused right at the point where the jet aircraft transition from the STARs to the approach paths when landing in this northeast flow. Aircraft in this operation will continue to fly similar paths and altitudes shown by the existing radar tracks and the dispersed path area. The dispersed path area in this operation still represents where air traffic controllers may typically vector aircraft during periods of increased traffic volume at the airport. Now, let's move to the next slide and we'll connect the approaches for this operation. Now, the approaches for the northeast flow, which are now shown in green, still begin at a waypoint where the STAR transitions to the approach at approximately 6,000 feet. In this board, for example, the Aldan STAR at the top of your screen transitions at heave waypoint at 6,000 feet. Similar to the Southwest operation, these connected approaches are contained within the area of existing radar tracks and will normally only be used by air traffic controllers during periods of low traffic volume. During the periods of higher traffic volume, we still need to vector the aircraft within the dispersed path areas to safely and efficiently sequence them for landing at the airport. This is our final board for the evening. And with that, I'd like to turn things back over to you, Michael.
All right, thank you so much, Rob. And thank you, Chip, for walking us through that material. So that That brings us to the point that we're ready to take your questions on the project. I'm going to ask our panel members to turn their cameras back on, and I'll just reintroduce real quickly. We heard from Chip Gibson, Environmental Team Manager for the FAA, as well as Robert Ross, who is Air Traffic Control at Raleigh-Durham. Bill Wise is the co-lead for the project on the FAA side. And from the airport, we have Bill Sandifer. He's the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. We have Tracy Montross from American Airlines, Mark Hopkins from Delta Airlines, Gary McMullen from Southwest Airlines, and Cesar Matos from the Airline Pilots Association. Sorry, Cesar, I was spelling out ALPA in my head. So we have some questions that are coming in. I want to remind you all that you can send us questions using the Zoom Q&A button or on social media, or text us at 949-478-0253. So let's go ahead and move into the first question. What is the purpose of the proposed new procedures and who will benefit? Well, I can tell you that Raleigh-Durham, it's a growing airport, and the system that I mentioned earlier, the National Airspace System, is we're modernizing that, and Raleigh's an important hub within that overall system. So this modernization will help Raleigh meet the demands on the airspace in Raleigh. And what we'll be doing is updating many procedures to accommodate in a safe and efficient flow of aircraft into and out of Raleigh. I think I touched on that earlier. So everybody really benefits from a system that's safe and efficient, from the people who fly in and out of the airport to those who rely on the airport for the movement of goods and services, the jobs that are associated with that. And of course, the FAA mission is safety and efficiency. I mentioned earlier, this is an FAA project, and that's why we have proposed the new procedures. So we have another question. Why do we need these procedures? Rob, I may ask you to chime in on that from an air traffic control perspective.
Yeah, sure, Michael. The procedures were required to be updated from the original design due to changes in criteria and for approach connectivity issues that we have with the current procedures. So think about this as when you're renovating a house, you start opening up walls and whatnot, and you find that something's not up to code, you have to bring it up to code. So it's kind of along the same lines here as far as the procedure aspect at the airport. We're bringing everything up to current design criteria.
All right, very good. Thanks, Rob. I don't know that I have much to add to that. So we need this to accommodate the demand at the airport and to meet those criteria as you explained. Okay, let's move on to another question. Did the RDU airport ask the FAA to do this project? All right, we might get a little bit of group feedback on that one, but Bill, I don't know if you want to, I'll let you answer that first, and then maybe others of us will chime in.
Yeah, sure, Michael. The easy answer is no. I think Rob talked about it best. It's a project to kind of update the code and make the procedures safe and efficient in the National Air Transportation System. So we certainly didn't ask you to do it, but we recognize and understand the reasons why you need to. And it will certainly, I think, benefit all users at RDU, and we applaud you for doing so.
All right, thanks, Bill. And I'll just reiterate that. So it's an FAA project that we initiated, but we've worked with industry, including the airport and the airlines. We want to make sure that the procedures are flyable, that they actually work for the fleet that operates in and out of the airport, and that they can do so safely and efficiently. Okay, we have a question that came in from Zoom. It's, see, I have a, says, thank you for holding this community meeting. More like this with two-way communication would be welcome. Did you calculate noise contours for the current air traffic and the proposed new flight patterns, in particular the potential differences that'll be heard within William V. Umstead State Park, our extremely popular nature park which is also listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and as you know, protected by 4F, LWCF, and more. If so, what is the modeled result, and how can you share the noise contours and anticipated those now and anticipated with the new flight paths? So, all right, good question. We're familiar with the park and know that it's there proximate to the airport. Chip, do you want to help out with this one?
I can certainly do my best, Michael. Thank you. As far as our analysis, we completed our National Environmental Policy Act analysis and review, including a noise analysis using approved software, which for us is the Aviation Environmental Design Tool, or AEDT. And we didn't identify any impacts that would be of reportable or significant nature. And as far as Olmsted goes, there were no procedures. None of the changes to the existing procedures would introduce flight tracks over Olmsted Park. So we're quite, let's see, I think we're going to see where it's at. Yep, it's right there in very close proximity to the airport. And based on the information that Rob shared with us on the boards and the traffic patterns, you can see that none of these proposed changes will introduce any flights over the park.
All right, Chip. And Rob, I don't know if you want to add anything, but I know this is the northeast flow. I may have missed it, but in the southwest flow, we can show that as well.
Yeah,
Pardon me if I missed that.
No, the southwest flow will look exactly the same. The flight path will miss the park.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Chip. Okay, we have a question. I don't see tackle, which is a procedure name. I don't see tackle as a current charted arrival procedure or STAR. Is tackle a new procedure that will replace the Karoo STAR? Bill, I might ask you if you would answer that one.
Yeah, glad to.
Bill Wise.
Yes. The tackle is a new procedure that is replacing the Karoo. This is for criteria reasons. We had to make minor adjustments on it, so we renamed the procedure.
So Bill, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Karoo goes away. Is that accurate or? Okay.
The Karoo will be
All right.
canceled when the tackle is published.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. Please keep those questions coming in, again, through the Zoom Q&A button or on social media, or you can text a question at 949-478-0253. We'll go ahead and move to another question. Will the RDU noise contours change, and will current maps be updated that realtors must get signed? If so, when? So that may be one that Bill Sandifer for the airport wants to chime in on. Chip, I don't know if you want to add anything, but Bill, let me go to you first. Bill Sandifer.
Yeah, sure, Michael. I'll start. The easy answer is the change in procedures have absolutely no effect on the noise contours for the airport. The noise contour maps that were approved by our board in the mid-90s remain valid and usable for us, and there really isn't going to be any changes to the disclosure requirements that came out as a result of those noise contours. So nothing will change from a noise contour perspective at the airport.
All right. Chip, anything to add? You're good.
Yes, I would like to add one quick note there, Michael, because this is a common confusion when we do these meetings and people ask the question about noise contours. When it comes to air traffic procedures, our analysis is based on population centroids or points on the ground that are based on U.S. Census data. And that's what we're looking at, those impacts for that and for areas of concern like Olmsted Park. The airport noise contours are an airport issue, and that's why Mr. Sandifer there was gracious to answer that question. So it's a different procedure, but we have no reportable or significant noise from our analysis.
All right, Bill. Chip, thank you. Okay, we have another question here. When will the new procedures be published? And we're on track to publish the new procedures for Raleigh early in 2021, probably in the February timeframe. So we're hoping to implement in the February 2021 timeframe. All right, we have another question. Will dispersion be reduced for approaches and/or departures? Rob, could you help with that, please?
Sure, Michael. That's a great question. The dispersion that occurs today for the arrivals and departures will continue as it is today. And just keep in mind that this dispersion happens based on the demand and the volume of traffic at the airport. So that area that we showed on the map that displayed in yellow, it's basically just that sequencing, the final sequencing that we line aircraft up to Raleigh to land.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And then I don't know, from a pilot perspective, I don't know if anybody wants to chime in from the airlines, but anything to share in terms of on the topic of dispersion, the accuracy of the procedure, or the fact that you don't always utilize, you're not going to be on the procedure 100% of the time. Gary, anything to add from your perspective at Southwest?
Sure. As pilots, we're required to follow the guidance that ATC gives us. They issue us clearances, and they're doing a great job of separating traffic. And it's our role to abide by the clearance so that we can remain in a safe, efficient operation into the airport. So there are times when we're flying the arrival, which is the piece that takes us into the Raleigh-Durham airport, that we have to come off of those arrivals to be able to provide the separation from other traffic. So yes, we will continue to do that as per the instructions we received from ATC.
All right, thanks, Gary. And probably one of the points is the more aircraft are using the procedures, the more that the precision builds in that safe separation. So as we get more aircraft on these procedures, that safety factor is inherently a part. But as you said, there are going to be times that either the volume is there or weather, for example, may create a condition that a pilot's going to be off of the procedure. Okay, didn't mean to take us too far off the procedure there. So let me jump back to the next question. Are paths to and from waypoints to runway published, or are they air traffic control vectors only? For the paths to and from waypoints to the runway, published, or are they air traffic control vectors only? Bill, do you want to take a shot at that?
Sure. In the Raleigh-Durham situation, the RNAV stars and SIDS are all published. The waypoints are on the charts. The stars are to the approaches and then onto the runway. For the SIDS, there will be some vectoring as there is today, the same they do today at Raleigh, to then waypoints out into the en route environment, in between the airports. Rob, do you have anything to add to that at all?
No, Bill, I think you covered it pretty good there.
All right, thanks, Bill. Okay, we have another question. Are there any plans for changes to arrivals common for piston or general aviation aircraft, such as the existing, is it Argyle, Rob? My apologies, and the SBV7 stars. So Rob, let me turn that over to you. My apologies for the pronunciation if I botched that.
That's okay, Michael. This is a great question, and it's something that we didn't cover in tonight's presentation. The arrivals for the piston aircraft, the smaller general aviation aircraft, nothing's changed as far as the procedures that we operate under for them. However, the existing Argyle arrival and the South Boston arrival, those procedures were based on ground-based navigation aids, and they are being canceled with this publication in early 2021. However, well, with that being said, the the aircraft that typically would fly those procedures will still mimic that with other routing. So they will still basically fly the same path, but it won't be published anymore. It's pretty limited as far as that goes on when we get those aircraft on the procedures.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Rob. I was kind of scanning the board to see if anybody was jumping in. We'll just keep moving. All right, here's a question. Just reading it the way it came in. Typically, the FAA has been more interested to listen to those who have the money and power to catch the ear of those in positions of authority. Due to those influences, the FAA will make changes that will move airplane noise from richer neighborhoods to poorer neighborhoods. Why should we trust the FAA to make changes that won't affect those in poorer neighborhoods? So Chip, I'm probably going to tag team with you on this one. I'll tell you, I know we've mentioned it, but this project is about safety and efficiency, and not because the FAA favors flying over particular communities. In fact, we as a matter of practice don't move aircraft from one community just at the request of another community. So Chip, I know you can expand from an environmental perspective how we review that, and that's beyond FAA to the National Environmental Policy Act that you referenced earlier.
That's correct, Michael. And we don't typically listen to communities like that. Our procedures are based on enhancing safety and efficiency. And as I explained in the beginning of our segment tonight, our analysis is in compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, and it makes us think about our impacts. We make sure that we consider whether there's a potential to cause any significant impacts to the human environment, including impacts to communities, especially environmental justice communities. In this case, we determined that these procedures don't affect or don't have the potential to cause any significant impacts based on the results of our noise analysis. And there would be no reportable or significant noise impacts to any of the communities that we serve in the RDU area. So it's not typical.
Right. So no disproportionate impact on communities because no reportable or significant noise impacts from the changes that are being made here. All right.
That's correct.
I think that covers that one. Thanks, Chip. Okay, we have one that came in from the FAA YouTube channel. Are these procedures only for Part 121, or do they also include Part 135? I may ask Mark Hopkins, Delta, maybe Caesar from ALPA. Mark, do you want to jump in on that? And maybe, if you don't mind, give a quick explanation, or hand it back to us if you want, but give a quick explanation of what we're talking about with the parts.
Sure, no problem, Michael. Yes, the procedures are available to all jet aircraft arriving and departing at Raleigh-Durham. This includes both Part 121 and Part 135 operations. So the Part 121 and 135 references go to the Federal Air Regulations, or FARs as they're known, and cover the rules of the road, if you will, for operating in the National Airspace System. There are many different subparts to those that cover all aspects of operating in the system. So 121 is generally the aircraft that we see at Raleigh-Durham. So hopefully that helps. Thanks.
I guess I hit my own mute button. Sorry. Thank you, Mark. And I was looking to see if anybody had anything to add to that.
No, the only thing that I will say, Michael, and just like Mark said, when these procedures are made for turbojet aircraft, it's for all turbojet aircraft, whether it's Part 121, which is airlines, Part 135, which is the charter operations, but even Part 91, which is a general aviation. If you are rich enough to have a Gulfstream, you can probably fly this procedure the same way also. So it applies to all turbojet aircraft.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark and Caesar. All right, just a reminder, thanks to those who have submitted questions that we've already gotten to. We're working as hard as we can to work through as we continue this evening. We're prioritizing the questions specifically related to this project. So we're working through those and keep the questions coming to us. Again, the Q&A button on Zoom, or you can submit those to us through YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter if you're on FAA social media there. And you can also text the question to 949-478-0253. Okay, we have a question here. Is the noise analysis available? Chip, I'm going to ask for some help on that. And maybe in the context of what you covered earlier with it being a categorical exclusion, which means there is some analysis.
That's correct, Michael. So there are different levels. If, as I explained, the 3 different levels of environmental documentation, environmental impact statement, the environmental assessment, and the categorical exclusion. Each level is more detailed analysis and more rigorous when it comes to it. However, our analysis, it doesn't mean our analysis for a CADX would be less rigorous. It's more conservative in the fact that if we were to see any reportable or significant impact, we would even go further with our analysis. But for the level of the categorical exclusion, as I stated, we took a random sample of 6 months of data. It was over 17,000 radar tracks to establish a baseline noise history. And then using the same with the proposed procedures modeled into it, that's when we compare those. And we compare those based on those population centroids provided by, or that we get based on U.S. Census data. And it gives us a reportable or significance or none. And if someone were to want to see a copy of that, if you're interested in viewing that noise analysis, we ask you to consider submitting a Freedom of Information Act request so that we have the documentation, and you can do so on our FAA.gov website at /FOIA, and we'll consider that request.
Great, thank you. We have a question. What is the status of the community engagement, and when is it scheduled to be completed? I guess we touched on this one a little bit earlier, but let me clarify. So the FAA is going above and beyond the outreach that's required in this project, as we do on many projects. We had good discussions with the airport leadership as well as the support with industry tonight to share information with the public. But I mentioned earlier that the environmental, our orders don't require, for the nature of these changes, that we have a true sort of public workshop. But we're here to answer questions and help the community understand the nature of these changes. So we did a briefing to elected officials in the Raleigh area earlier this month and briefed them on the procedures, an overview similar to what you've heard. In fact, you've heard more tonight from Chip, I think, probably than we briefed the elected officials, but on the environmental analysis. And we told them about our plan to hold the virtual public information meeting tonight and ask for their help getting the word out to their constituents. So that's essentially where we are. And I mentioned earlier, we're on track to implement new procedures in the February timeframe. That's kind of the status of the project as it stands today. Let me move to another question. Will non-airline traffic be able to use the Northeast departure SID, now restricted to some airlines only? Rob, do you, we may want to pull up one of the boards on that, I'm not sure.
Michael, let's go ahead and pull up board number 1. And looking at the question, I believe they're referring to the departure procedure to the Northwest, as that is the only one that has some restrictions right now, the Elwood departure to the Northwest. And it is not restricted based on airline usage only. It's based on city pairs. There's about 10 or 11 airports that are authorized to use that departure procedure. And it's all predicated on other traffic flows in the area, And unfortunately, we can't change that at the time. It'll just cause too many other conflicts.
Okay, Rob. And obviously air traffic moves. I'm glad you pointed out that based on the destination. So that's obviously a factor in moving the aircraft safely and efficiently through the system.
Yeah, Michael, and I'd like to just add one more thing to this, just to touch base on all the other procedures themselves as well. The west departure, the Shepherd procedure, that is predominantly, it's restricted only to jet traffic, and that remains the same for the new procedures in February. But the other 5 departure procedures are available to any aircraft that's properly equipped to operate on them.
Okay, Rob, thanks. Bill, you can shake your head if the answer is no. Anything to add to that? Bill Wise, you're good? Okay. All right, and I know, Rob, you said you thought they meant Northwest, so I'll just say if we misinterpreted, or if the person asking the question wants to clarify, we'll do our best to address that if you get back to us with a follow-up. We have a question here. What's the experience with similar procedure changes at other airports that are similar to Raleigh-Durham? So that's probably a great question to ask some of our airline participants. Caesar, do you want to
Sure.
help with that one?
Sure. Yeah, I certainly can, Michael. In a nutshell, it's been very positive. I mean, it's modernizing the systems. Not that they were unsafe before, but they're just better. They're able to, like Rob said at one point, connect the start to the approaches to the arrival, and it's just a more seamless, just like the presentation showed, a more predetermined and a path all the way down to the runway. So in my experience and from everything that I have experienced, has been very positive.
Okay, thanks, Caesar. Gary, anything from your perspective to add?
You bet. We too have had a very positive experience with the new procedures. The goal is always safety and efficiency. And can we improve the system that we are now working in to improve the quality, how we can fly the procedures in the airplane, how the controllers can use them in conjunction with issuing us clearances. The response from pilots has been very positive, but more importantly, it's always good for the pilots sitting up front to open the door, and as the passengers get off, the comments that we often hear is, what kind of a procedure did you fly into the airport? Because it seemed quieter, it seemed smoother, and they're right, they are, because they're much easier for us to fly safely. They are reduced thrust approaches and arrivals, so they are having the effect that we always try to design into the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks, Caesar. And it seems like it fits in here, but I think it's worth repeating that it's helpful when the pilot and the controllers are on this, and the aircraft itself essentially are on the same page with regard to the procedure being flown. And it may be a good analogy, but if you think about giving someone directions between your house and the grocery store, for example, you're telling them to head down the road, take the second left, make a right, head this way, watch the speed limit, etc. But these procedures represent a defined path from point A to point B. And as I said, the pilot and the controller and the aircraft, when it's programmed into the flight management system, are all viewing that procedure the same way. So hopefully that analogy may be helpful for someone out there. Okay, let's move on. We'll keep moving. We've got questions coming in. During periods of light traffic, do you foresee pilots being cleared for both a star and an approach seamlessly in one clearance? So that may be a question for, let me go Bill Wise to you, and then Gary, it looks like you're already maybe ready. Okay, Bill Wise.
Exactly. The new designs, the boards you saw earlier, I'll use the Aldan for an example. They are designed today so that as aircraft are coming from other airports in the en route environment, they can be given a clearance and it's connected all the way to the approach. This idea is so that the aircraft can descend at its most efficiently. At idle, usually, hopefully flight idle, so that would reduce noise. This would be in probably more of IFR conditions, when the weather may be low, light traffic times, especially at Raleigh-Durham. During visual times, the pilot may get a visual clearance, which at that time he could go more direct to the runway, but I'll let Gary speak to that. But yeah, the whole idea is to design it, the procedures to connect them so that it's more efficient and quieter procedure all the way from the en route environment to the runway.
Gary, I'll come right to you, but I just want to expand. Bill said IFR, just want to say instrument flight rules. Think about reduced visibility for weather conditions, that it's not just clear and unlimited visibility. So over to you, Gary.
Yeah, we can also add to what Bill is saying. When we talk about a STAR, we're talking about something similar to an interstate highway that starts about 150 miles from the airport. And that highway leads us into the Raleigh-Durham area where the STAR, or this arrival, attaches to the approach. And the approach is what leads us to the runway. That's an important piece because the aircraft that we fly today has a flight management computer on board, and each of these procedures is programmed into that computer, and that computer gives us very, very good information as pilots to be able to make an idle descent. The arrivals, the approaches into Raleigh-Durham Airport are designed to be at near idle, and it helps the computer understand how we should fly the airplane and give us some very valuable information to assist us in flying the airplane. And does it help us? Bill did a great job of explaining, can we always do that? And the variables within aviation tells us we cannot, because there's weather, there's other traffic, there's a lot of things that happen that ATC or the controllers have to help us with, and sometimes we can't fly that procedure exactly as designed. So they are a great benefit, and they are helping. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks, Bill. Okay, move to the next question. This is from someone who lives in Wood Valley, an older late 70s, early 80s neighborhood east of Raleigh-Durham and roughly in line with the short runway at Terminal 1. How will the new FAA procedures affect traffic approaching the short runway from the east? And I think that's referring to the shorter of the parallel runways, Rob. So maybe you can help with that. But our folks are saying that's about 4.5 miles northeast of the east parallel runway.
Yeah, Michael, that'd be great. Why don't we bring up board number 5 to take a look at, and that might help give us a better understanding here. And I'll agree that most likely looking at it, they are talking about runway 23 left, the shorter parallel. And if we track along the final approach course there out to about 4 or 5 miles, just before the arc begins, we're going to see that the dispersed path area there, and we're also going to see some existing track data. And we really anticipate that the arrivals and everything will basically remain as they are today. Different weather conditions and whatnot that happen, like you talked about earlier, that with reduced visibility, we have to turn aircraft far enough out on the final course there to the runway to meet certain legal requirements to complete the approach. One of our, I'm not sure if one of the industry guys would like to talk about that potentially, but if the question comes up later, we can definitely answer that.
Yeah, from an industry perspective, you're what, 4.5 miles off from the runway, and what's going on in the cockpit then? I mean, you're not trying to feed the answer, but you're on fairly short final. Caesar?
Yeah, 4.5 miles from the runway, you're basically below 1,500 feet above the ground. You're getting pretty close to that area where you're probably around 1,200 feet, getting pretty close where you need to be, pretty much stable for in order to complete a stabilized approach to the runway. And once again, for stabilized approach, we need to be at in a landing configuration, gear down, final flaps put in place at the right speed, lined up on the runway, on the glide path to the runway. So all those things need to be in place in order to have a safe landing. And so once you get inside of 5 miles, you start getting pretty close into the runway environment, and where you really need to be pretty much stable by then.
All right, Caesar, thanks. Rob, thank you. So basically no change to how aircraft will be flying with these new procedures versus what you see there today. But if you're under that final approach course, sometimes, I think Chip may have said before, but if you see aircraft today, you're going to see aircraft in the future. If you don't see aircraft today, then I wouldn't expect that you're going to see aircraft in the future. But in that particular question, I think it's more the former case. You're seeing them today, and that likely won't change significantly. Okay. All right, thanks for the tag team on that. Let's go to the next question. It's my understanding from talking with active commercial airline pilots that the specific approach utilized at RDU and perhaps other airports is dictated more by pilots and the technology of their planes than by the FAA and air traffic control. Do you anticipate that the new FAA procedures will be followed at RDU when they do not seem to be followed at other airports? How will reluctant pilots and antiquated equipment and technology be addressed? So let's, I know we're going to get some answers on this one. Rob, let me go to air traffic control first, and Caesar and others.
Yeah.
Folks may unmute all over the place.
Great, Michael. Yeah, this is definitely a multi-person question here. From an air traffic controller's perspective, and speaking from Raleigh-Durham, I can't obviously speak for other facilities, but we definitely favor whichever procedure is the most efficient for given weather conditions. Majority of the year, that's typically a visual operation for us, and that allows us to be the most flexible and most efficient to land and depart a vast majority of aircraft in a given hour. If somebody else like to maybe add on to that a little bit more.
Well, I'll jump in there. I'm sure somebody's going to jump in after me also. But from what I get from the question is, and I think it's this has been a moving target. It's been a process. When RNAV first came along, and like it was said in the presentation, it's been around RDU now for 10 years. When they first came into play, this is one of those things where I think technology was actually way out there before controllers and pilots could get their heads wrapped around it. So we saw a lot of these approaches that were available, and I think Gary said it before, they're easier to fly than the old approaches. They're fantastic, they're safe, they're very easy to fly. You pre-program it in the computer in the aircraft, and it's a fantastic way to navigate the aircraft all the way to the ground. But in a lot of places that they were available for many years, we kept hearing, well, only the ILS was being offered, and you would hear pilots come up and say, well, I request the RNAV approach or the RNP or whatever the case may be. And of course, ATC would comply and give it to us anyway. But I think it's been a process, and we're much further down the road today than we were 10 years ago. As I go around the country and even around outside of the country, RNP is more and more the approach of choice for both ATC and the pilots. So I believe that is changing, and I see it changing, and I think I've rattled enough for a while, so let somebody else jump in there.
Okay, thanks, Caesar. Gary, anything to add?
Yeah, we agree with Caesar. At the beginning of when we started RNAV and RNP, it was about 10 or 15 years ago, there was a learning curve. There was a lot of change that was occurring, but we were moving into a new phase of aviation, using the equipment on board the aircraft better and more efficiently. The pilots have adopted that, and so has controllers, and we are continuing to see rapidly rising rates in use of RNP. And at the bigger airports especially is where we see a lot of the RMP approaches being used. Those approaches are incredibly efficient and incredibly quiet because we're flying nearly the entire approach at idle thrust. So there are big changes. They have been adopted by pilots and the controllers, and it's exciting to see where we're heading.
Very good. Anyone else? Rob?
Michael, I'd like to just echo off of one thing that Caesar had mentioned there. He had thrown in the ILS, or the Instrument Landing System, the ground-based navigation. When we looked at the approach procedures on each board there, the vast majority of them, just to give a little bit more perspective in case there's any pilots out there listening to us this evening, the ILSs, the RNAV approaches, and the RNP approaches are now basically all overlaying each other and sharing the same waypoints on the final. Outside of a few waypoints out at the initial approach fixes, but for the most part, all the new procedures are now aligned with each other.
And one more thing, and I know we're probably, and I'll tag along to what Rob just said also, and we hear the term visual approaches thrown in there too quite often, and they're fantastic tools for ATC to use. On the 121 world, in the airline world, whether we get a visual approach, whether ATC can clear us for a visual approach, more than likely, I would say 99% of the time, we're going to back that approach up with one of the instrument approaches, only because it's a safe thing to do. And for us, aviation professionals, whether controllers, all of us on this panel, safety is number one. So we may be, Rob may clear me for a visual approach. I'm going to fly you, but and bring the airplane in, but I'm basically going to be flying either the ILS or the RNP or the RNAV, and that's just going to ensure that we are going to stay safer even to a higher degree.
Great point. Okay, let's jump off that one. We'll move to the next question. Is one takeaway point that folks under existing non-final flight paths may experience planes at 6,000 feet versus the 7,000 feet they previously may have? So let's see, Rob, do you want to help with that? Maybe you or Bill Wise?
Yeah, sure. I'll step in on this one if Bill would like to chime in as well after. That'd be great. But yeah, the changes there from 7,000 to 6,000 feet to build in basically separation to the procedures themselves. We use that 6,000 foot altitude as an air traffic control. It's kind of like a placeholder. So the aircraft departs from Raleigh-Durham. They're initially assigned 6,000 feet. And if there's no other aircraft in conflict with them, no other arrival, then we'll climb them up to a further higher altitude for us, which is usually 12,000 feet. And then we'll hand that aircraft off to another facility, and the aircraft will then continue to climb into its cruise portion of flight.
All right, Rob, thanks. It reminds me of the video, just maybe to reiterate a little bit, but there's a section in the video that talks about how the procedures by design are deconflicted. So to the extent that air traffic control doesn't need to hold an aircraft down, as you said, we're just gonna, I'll look for Gary to nod on this because I know he's going to, but there's nothing a pilot wants to do more than climb up and get out of the airspace. So, to the extent that it's clear to do so, everybody's going to be on the same page there. All right. Anything, Gary? I see you unmuted. Did you?
Well, that's exactly right, Michael. We always tell each other, because the controllers and the pilots are very close cousins, we always love talking to each other, but it's nice to see us go.
All right. Okay, there's a comment or question here. Someone saw their question was deleted by the host. Will all the questions be answered and posted? So things are coming into a Q&A queue and they're getting pulled out. And if you're not familiar with Zoom or some of the other social media platforms, that just means that some of the folks who are helping us with the questions and sending them our way are they're pulling them out of that queue and getting them ready for us. So it doesn't mean they're deleted. We're moving the questions to a queue for the panel. We're getting lots of great questions, and much like if we were all in the same room tonight, some of you would have to be patient for your turn, and I appreciate you doing that. We're working as hard as we can to get through all the questions, and we'll continue to do so. Let's jump to the next question. When flight paths are determined, I guess that means in the design, are noise abatement takeoff methods considered that will help minimize noise on the ground for residents? So as part of the design process, there may be a couple folks who want to chime in. Gary?
I can help with that because the design process for departures is really dependent upon the airlines and whoever's flying the airplane. I know that each airline, and the others can speak, of course, but each one of us do have a departure procedure that gets us away from the ground as fast as we possibly can and to a given altitude. So we're flying the quietest airplanes that we can today. We're flying a departure that reduces the impact on the surrounding communities as much as we possibly can every time we take off. It is a standard takeoff that we use and a standard climb to try to help the local airport and the communities.
All right, Gary, thanks. And I know there's an environmental aspect to this. Chip, I'll toss it your way. And Bill, I don't know if Bill Sandifer, I don't know if you want to say anything from a noise abatement perspective, but we'll go Chip and then see who wants to jump in.
All right, thank you, Michael. Yes, as we showed in the video and also in the discussion for our NEPA compliance and review, the noise analysis was considered that what the noise impacts would be over all land uses within the study area, including schools, residences, environmental justice, low-income communities, that kind of thing. And our analysis didn't indicate any significant or reportable noise impacts to any area. And just as the previous question brought up, the 6,000 to 7,000, the use of optimized descent paths and the efficient takeoff procedures that the airlines use, it all goes into making a quieter and most efficient methodology.
All right, thanks, Chip. So one of the things that I can share from a noise perspective, since it talks about minimizing noise, both the airport and the FAA have resources that we use to focus on noise comments and feedback from the community. And that's part of the value of the partnership that we have working with the airport on a project like this. They're aware of where those sensitivities have existed in the past. Doesn't mean that there are always opportunities, as I said before. Essentially, you have to get planes off of an existing piece of pavement, being the runway, or down to an existing runway, and those exist where they do today. But it's not like we don't have awareness from any prior noise complaints where those sensitive areas may be. It also doesn't mean that we can make the noise go away completely. So, Bill, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, Michael. Probably one thing, we do have a process where we can get citizen feedback. I mean, just really simple, go to RDU.com. There's a couple of links there to get to an aircraft noise portal where there's a phone number to our full-time noise officer that we have on staff, whose daily life is dedicated to answering questions from citizens all over the community. And if you want to send us something electronically, you can certainly do that as well. So we'll take feedback at any time, and we will respond and try and educate the community as best we can about aircraft noise, and continue to monitor what's going on. So just wanted to give a plug for RDU.com.
Great, thanks, Bill. And FAA.gov, if you go to FAA.gov and search for Southern Region or noise, you'll find a link to information the FAA has available for our region on noise, as well as a link to what we call our noise portal. So that information is available as well. Okay. Here's a question. Bill Wise, I know this one's coming your way. Are the VOR for 5 right and the VOR for 23 left, the 2 runway approaches, being canceled as part of this effort?
Yes, VOR 5 right and 23 left are going to be canceled in February. The intended publication date of the other procedures These are
Okay.
older procedures based on ground-based navigation again, and will be canceled.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we'll keep moving. The project video mentions that similar procedures have existed at RDU for roughly the last decade, but are infrequently used. Are there plans to review the adoption of these updated procedures to ensure they are having the intended effect? So, Bill, I may take that back to you. Rob, if you
No,
want
I'll
to follow on.
Yeah, as part of our process, we will continue to monitor that, work with the facility and the airlines to make sure the procedures were built correctly for safety reasons. If we did miss anything, we will correct those issues immediately. So yes, we will monitor them for some time.
Rob, and do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just one thing to add, Michael. The current STARS, the arrival procedures themselves, are heavily used at the airport today. Just due to design issues with connectivity, they don't tie into the approaches in an efficient manner.
Right. Okay. So short answer is yes, we have information on the procedure utilization. And I think we mentioned up front that, as the question references, that a low utilization points to a couple issues that we're trying to resolve with these new procedures and the updated design. All right, the next question says, I'm a local general aviation pilot. Thanks for doing this. Local pilots are aware that there is some potential for conflict between aircraft landing northeast at RDU and aircraft doing practice RNAV approaches to runway 21 into TTA. So will these changes make that situation better, worse, or about the same? Rob, any thoughts on that from an air traffic perspective?
Yeah, Michael, the changes will have no effect on the operation at the Raleigh Executive Airport and the RNAV 21 approach.
All right, so no, about the same, I guess, is the option. Okay. Okay, thanks. There's another one. General Aviation would like to thank RDU Air Traffic Control for all they do. Will this affect us in general aviation?
I could take that one right back from you, Michael. And the short answer, no. The general aviation, the way we handle the smaller, lighter, propeller-driven aircraft will remain the same.
Okay. Rob, you're helping us churn through these. I have another one that may be coming your way. Will VFR, visual flight rules, will the visual be reduced?
As far as VFR aircraft go, no. The operation will still remain the same. You know, we treat all the operations as a first come, first served basis. And you really should see no change to the overall operation with these new procedures.
All right. So Rob, I'm going to go off here just a little bit. So correct me if I don't say this right. But if if the question is, will I still have the option to fly visual flight rules or visual? The answer is, yeah, you'll have all those opportunities that exist today. But at the same time, a pilot could say, you know, my aircraft has this new procedure loaded. I'm gonna take advantage of the new procedure. So a GA pilot could say that in the future.
Absolutely, and we definitely get those requests routinely, where GA aircraft would like to practice the approaches at the airport, and we try to accommodate that as best we can.
All right, very good, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a comment: by reducing the altitude by 1,000 feet, the noise level will increase in the North Raleigh, West Wake Forest areas. There are several schools. What was considered about noise over densely populated areas? I kind of read that the way it came in. Chip, do you, that's referring back, I think we touched before on the procedure where the initial assigned altitude is going to be 6,000 feet versus 7,000, but that doesn't mean that aircraft won't be cleared to continue through that altitude. So Chip, do you have anything that you want to say from a noise analysis perspective?
Well, from the noise analysis, the procedure is designed for safety and efficiency. And I think efficiency is one of those things that gets a little confusing. But that has to do with, just like they stated, in the change in that altitude, it's so the controllers can, set up the airplane and make sure there's deconfliction there. The way that we do our analysis, we review the procedures based on historical operations, and then we put the procedures in the model as proposed, and we compare the two. And that analysis doesn't indicate any significant or reportable noise impacts to any areas. That includes schools, residences, densely populated areas that way. So I think the more efficient the procedure is, the quicker the airplane gets off the ground or gets on the ground. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chip. All right, so we had a question, maybe there was a question about closed captioning. I just want to share that if you need to use closed captioning service, you can click on the CC button or the closed captioning button on Zoom, and that will show the closed caption. You can either show the subtitle kind of just lagging behind what we're speaking, or I believe there's an option to view the full transcript there as well. I just want to share that with folks who may be interested. In addition, we're getting a number of questions about the rock quarry, and we don't want you to think we're ignoring those questions, but it's out, we're seeing them, but it's outside of the scope from the meeting tonight focused on these procedure changes. So we're not planning to address rock quarry questions in the meeting about the new procedures. And I just want to share that with folks who may have hoped that this was a broader scope tonight, but we really are focused on these new procedures and the changes that are coming in February. Okay, this one may be a follow-up regarding the dispersion question that was asked a while ago. It seems like the new procedures are designed to minimize dispersion. Could you please revisit this issue? Bill, do you want to share some perspective on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Rob can handle this probably better than I can, but the SIDs are designed the way they are today. The controllers are going to vector the aircraft coming off the runway on a departure procedure and turn them so you'll have that dispersion. There's still going to be, the timing of a controller when the pilot turns the aircraft after given instructions. So you'll get dispersion there. On the stars, more towards busy timeframes, they have to sequence the aircraft. So they will be sequencing aircraft, which lead controllers to vector and will lead to the dispersion. So as Rob said several times, you're not going to see much of a difference in the operation than what you do today.
Okay. Rob, you're good. All right. Okay, so here's one for Southwest departure flow. What controls aircraft path from RDU to Qatar? Sometimes I botch my waypoints. So
You got that one pretty good, Michael.
all right, Rob.
Just as Bill mentioned a moment ago there, as soon as the aircraft depart, they're on a heading that's assigned by the controllers. So the path is controlled by those headings. And depending upon where traffic is, that heading might be delayed, or as Bill said, depending upon how quickly an aircraft turns. So that dispersion for the path going westbound will still be there today. I think Sarah's bringing up the board. Yep. Yeah, so the dispersion that you see to the southwest as it tracks towards Qatar will pretty much remain the same as it is today.
All right, Rob, thank you. Doing a quick scan, let's move. I know we're after 7:30, so we're probably going to stop taking new questions, but we're going to work through the ones that have already been submitted. So we'll continue to address, and we're going to just jump to the next question now. Aircraft capability was listed as a reason existing procedures are not used. Was this due to the paths or aircraft technical limitations? And if it was due to technical limitations, is there anything the airlines are doing to enhance their capabilities?
Michael, I'll be happy to answer on behalf of
Or
American.
Tracy? Yeah, go ahead, Tracy, please.
Thank you. And just want to acknowledge that airlines and throughout the industry are investing in new aircraft. I know for American into RDU, the E190 aircraft that we previously were flying had some difficulties using this procedure in the past. Actually, because of COVID, we've recently retired that aircraft and have invested significantly in our fleet renewal efforts. And so that's both from positives in regards to noise, but also in regards to emissions. And so I think that's one of the things that airlines are doing to address the capability of our aircraft is through fleet renewal, and all of the carriers are doing that.
Great, thanks, Tracy. Gary, did you have anything to add?
Yes, I can add to that. Between 2007 and 2010, Southwest Airlines spent over $150 million to modify our aircraft to be able to fly this type of procedure. So we took advance notice of what the FAA was showing that we would have to be flying in a few years. And we took the stance that we needed to upgrade our airplanes to do that as fast as possible. So we did that, and we are 100% fully capable of flying all the RNAV, RNP approaches that we have in existence today. So it is paying big dividends that we made that change. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gary. I'm not trying to leave you out, Mark. I don't know if you have anything from a Delta perspective, but.
No, I agree with the comments that Tracy and Gary made. Tracy made a great point there with COVID. Most of the aircraft that we had that were not capable of executing these approaches have been retired. So as going forward, virtually all the aircraft we have in our fleet will be able to conform at Raleigh-Durham.
All right, great, Mark, thanks. And Gary, Tracy, good tag team. Okay, we have a question. The new approach seems like it would reduce noise, for example, less engine revving and braking, yet it seems like you're indicating there will be no reduction in noise. Can you please further address your findings in this area? Chip, I may go to you, and then we'll go to the airlines. Chip, anything from your perspective?
Sure, thanks, Michael. It's true that using optimized profile descents and descents with limited level offs can have small noise benefits. Because the procedures were largely designed to follow the existing flight tracks, any variability in that noise from the baseline data, I'm reminded that we're used over 17,000 flight tracks analyzed, didn't trigger the threshold to be considered significant or reportable. And no significant increase, as I said, it's an objective standard. It's not a subjective statement on how an individual would perceive the noise. Because the procedures were designed to overfly existing tracks, that if you experience noise in the past, you're likely to hear and see aircraft in the future.
Okay, thanks, Chip. And Gary, you were unmuted there.
Yeah, Michael, to help answer the question too from the airline side, we have a unique ability. And the previous question asked, do we monitor the outcome of new procedures? We have the ability to monitor thousands and thousands of data that's come out of our airplanes. And we look at that on a monthly basis. So when we identify that there is a problem, like is being spoken about, the speed brakes are being used too often, the landing gear has to come down too early, the aircraft is going too fast to be able to fly a stable approach that Caesar spoke about. We analyze all of that data and we bring that to these meetings so that we can make the procedures better. When we're flying an airplane that is very clean, it doesn't decelerate very well, it doesn't descend very well, and the procedures aren't built for that, we as pilots cause the air traffic controllers problems because we can't make the airplane do what they need it to do. So that is a piece of the design of these. And yes, they have been tweaked a little bit, even though they follow the same flight path, to remove the bad traits that we saw with speed brakes and some of the things that we wanted to eliminate.
All right, great. Thanks for following up, Gary. All right, we had a question that came in. Will the Aircraft Noise Abatement Committee be reactivated? Bill, can I ask for you to help with that one? Bill Sandifer?
Sure, I sure can. I mean, especially with this project and otherwise, there's really no triggering event to do so. So we have no plans at this time to reestablish that noise committee.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bill. Here's another question. How will these procedures change when runway 5 left, 23 right is shifted over? So that, Rob, do you have any initial thoughts on that?
Sure. From an air traffic perspective, when a new runway is built, we will have to modify the procedures to align to that new runway. The SIDS and STARS may have to be amended as well. That just depends, at the time we take a look at building the new procedures.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And it probably underscores the fact that we think that these are important enough to implement for their safety and efficiency benefits now that we're doing so. So we're expecting these to come online early in 21. Okay, here's a question. Did I hear you say departures now expect 6,000 and arrivals, at least on the bus procedure, still at 6,000? What will be the procedural separation, and who collects the quarters every time we get cleared or read back 7,000 for the first month? Let's see. Rob, did you follow that?
Yeah, I think I've got the basics of it. The arrival from the northwest, the all day and over butts, there is no confliction with the departures. From the southwest over Mountner, the procedures themselves have built-in separation to keep the arrivals and departures separated as they progress along the procedures.
All right.
And just one more thing might add, Michael, as far as in-house goes, we as air traffic controllers, we take the safety aspect of this very seriously, and we are working on plans to ensure that there are no instances where an aircraft or a pilot may read back the wrong altitude assigned to them. So we definitely pay close attention to readbacks when it comes to altitudes.
Okay, thanks, Rob. I'm going to move us to the next question. Looks like we still have a handful in the queue here. Is there any estimate on how much fuel may be saved via reduced thrust with the updates to these procedures? Any estimates?
Michael, I'll be happy to quote
Tracy?
FAA. FAA is estimated or anticipates that through 2030, next gen benefits could reduce CO2 emissions by 27 million metric tons, which is equivalent to 5.9 million cars off the road. So while maybe not specific to this procedure, next gen does have a global impact on emission reduction. We've anticipated that around 12%, we could have a 12% reduction in fuel use and global and greenhouse gas emissions could be achieved through the transition to satellite-based navigation. So it's a very important, Metroplex and PBN procedures are very important to improving our environmental record as well.
Right, thanks so much, Tracy. Gary, anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, part of the data that we monitor as part of the implementation of new procedures or changes actually is the fuel and time that we burn. A good procedure star, and I'll just concentrate on the arrivals and the approaches, will save between 10 and 20 gallons per arrival. That seems insignificant, but when you have 4,000 flights a day as Southwest Airlines, that number grows rapidly. So saving time in the system that we fly in is very important, but ours also becoming carbon negative, as all of our airlines are trying to do, is extremely important. And that's one of the goals of this project.
All right, thanks, Gary. I mentioned our focus FAA on the safety and efficiency, but again, we're happy to eliminate level offs and inefficiency in the climbs as well. And we've talked a lot about the departures and the near idle approach capabilities that can be utilized with a procedure like this. So, all right, great, thank you. I'm going to try to keep us moving. How will moving Butts and Essel north affect the dispersion in these areas? Is the dispersion area expected to move slightly northward as well? So we may want to pull up a board with those, because I'm just mentioning waypoint names, but Rob, can you help with that? Or
Yeah, I'll get us started here, Michael. Moving the waypoints slightly to the north there may have a very slight impact as far as the dispersion area, but where it is there now, you see aircraft today. It's where we as controllers mostly need the aircraft to be in order to safely sequence them to the runway that they're assigned. I'll echo off of Gary's previous question when he also talked about aircraft descending on the arrivals. We're often forced to utilize speed brakes, and this puts them in a situation where they're not any benefit to controllers here. They can't help us out with getting the aircraft down, getting it slowed down. So the movement had a lot to do with those issues.
okay, thanks, Rob. I'm looking to see anybody else. All right, let's keep moving. The questions keep coming our way, panel. Will these changes have positive environmental benefits in terms of reduced emissions? We touched on that a minute ago. Let's see if anybody has anything to add to what we just covered. Some of the fuel burn I know Gary was talking about translates to emissions. Tracy as well. Caesar?
Yeah, all I was going to say is that I think Tracy and Gary covered it very well. Anytime we don't have to bring the power up when we level off, it's less fuel being burned. It's as simple as that, so I really have nothing else to add.
Right. Okay. No, I think we covered that. All right, we have a question. How are these new procedures going to impact the flight proximity in relation to homes on the flight path?
Yeah, I'll take this one, Michael. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
With the updated procedures, the area the aircraft are flying in today, they will still continue to operate in the same area when these new procedures are implemented.
Okay. So I'm just looking back at that. So how will it impact flight proximities? It's the same areas. All right, I think you got it covered. Thanks, Rob. All right. How will the arrival and departure flow maps be published? So there may be two parts of that question. So for the public that's involved in the meeting tonight, all the materials that we've shared are already posted on www.faa.gov/go/RDU. That includes the boards that Rob spoke to that depict the procedures. It includes the overview video as well as some of the slides that Chip and I covered. So those are out there. And then within the next, I'd say 24 hours, the actual recording of this meeting will be posted on that same website. So again, that's www.faa.gov/go/RDU. In terms of actual publication from a pilot perspective, that'll occur in the February timeframe unofficial charts. So I think maybe I've got that covered. Anybody have anything to add? Okay. Let's see, what do we have here? The change from, maybe that's a comment.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to comment, Michael, on the altitude change from the departures from 7 to 6,000 feet. Just to reiterate that it's unlikely to have an impact on the departures themselves. Like I said previously, as soon as we talk to those aircraft, as soon as they depart from the airport, if they're not in conflict with any arrival, then we will climb those aircraft to a higher altitude immediately. Essentially, they'll never level off at 6,000 feet unless there is an aircraft out there that is in conflicting flight path with them.
All right, great point. So what we said is you're cleared to 6, but as long as you're cleared above 6 before you get to 6, you don't ever level off. And that certainly will happen with many of the flights. Okay. All right, it looks like this is our final question. Has the FAA looked into conducting an air quality analysis to determine the effect of the increased number of flights on the community's air quality? Chip, do you want to help with that one?
I can give it a shot, Michael. Thanks. So the FAA works with industry. The FAA is the designated certification agency when it comes to new aircraft and engines. So newer aircraft and more efficient flight procedures are resulting in reduced emissions. I think you've heard from our industry partners here this evening about the reduction in greenhouse gases and fuel use. So this particular project is not expected to increase or decrease the number of flights as a result. Air quality is not expected to be impacted as a result of the number of the flights. But if you'd like to know more about what we're looking at in the FAA and reducing air quality impacts in general, you could go to FAA.gov and emissions, search emissions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
I'll also add on behalf of industry, there's a lot of exciting work happening among all of the carriers related to reducing emissions and the effect of air travel on the environment. I'd encourage you to visit our websites. I know American is pursuing a big project on sustainable aviation fuels, as are many of the other carriers. And again, all of this information would be available on our website for American, AA.com, and our environment and social governance report, which was just published and has details about our commitment on climate change. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tracy. And FAA.gov as well. I imagine all of us have some information on air quality. If you just search, take a look at that, and hopefully that'll help with the question. So I think that brings us to the end of the questions that we're taking tonight. The ones that are coming through in the queue have stopped for the panel. So I first want to thank all of you who submitted questions to us tonight, that you joined us in the first place. So thanks for giving us questions. Thanks for spending a good bit of your evening with us. I want to thank the entire FAA team for the work that went into the preparation for this public information meeting, including those who work behind the scenes and ahead of time to provide great support so that the meeting would be as beneficial as I hope it was. I want to give a special thanks to RDU Airport, to Bill Sandifer, again, Senior VP and Chief Operating Officer for the airport, as well as Michael Langeth, the airport CEO, for the support of your team at the airport, as well as the airlines and pilots who joined us tonight. So thank you, Gary, Tracy, Mark, and Caesar. And I'm going to give one last reminder. It's on your screen here, but again, the project website is faa.gov/go/RDU, and you can find all of the materials from tonight's meeting. And in the coming day or so, you should be able to have be able to access a recorded session of tonight's meeting on that website. And it's probably available maybe even sooner than that on our FAA social media sites. So thank you again, all of you, for your participation and your interest in the future of the Raleigh-Durham International Airport and the surrounding airspace. I hope everybody has a great evening and stay safe. Thank you.